All right, everyone. Well, it's 5:35, so thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to give a little introduction about our group. I'm Kale Fellenstein, here's Brianna, and we represent the high up sort of community, doing a series of panels where hopefully every week we're going to talk to some I/O professionals, hear about their stories and their kind of career path in the specific sector of I/O. So today we're talking about consulting and academia. Our sessions are all recorded and transcribed as well, so the whole video will be available after the fact if someone seems like they're interested, but they missed the live show. We have a YouTube channel as well as a LinkedIn page where we post all of the recordings. So yeah, I think with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ian to start us off with sort of our speaker introductions.
Heck yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, it's great to be here, and I'll kind of introduce myself at a 30,000 foot level and then can dive into more stuff as we go. Hi, I'm Ian Siderits. I am a seventh year PhD candidate, all but dissertation, and you'll see the reason behind that when I start talking a little bit about the kinds of stuff that I do. Started in the field much like many folks, and I'll take this very quickly, I won't belabor the point. Was like, I did psych in high school. I like it. Cool, I'm gonna do that in undergrad. Went into undergrad and said, I'm gonna be a psychologist and I'm gonna be embedded in an Army unit. And so that was the track. And then in junior year, I took an I/O psych class, found out that existed, went, this sounds really cool. Joined a lab for that professor who taught the class, started doing technology research, threw out a couple of applications for graduate schools, got accepted, went, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Looked at the Army, said, hey, would you pay for 4 years of a PhD? As you might expect, they said no. So I went, okay, then I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to do the PhD because I already got accepted. And initially went in doing leadership research with my advisor, Bart Craig, and did that for about a year before I got pulled into a project doing counterterrorism research, which was then equally fascinating to me. From there, pulled into trust research, and now most recently and emphatically, nature research. So I do all kinds of work around nature contact in the workplace and biophilic design. So bringing nature into the workplace to make that a space that is healthy. And so that's my kind of current research focus and passion. And at the same time, I also teach quite a lot and love teaching immensely. It is the thing that lights my fire. I've taught anything from personality psychology to 50 people to human resource management to 350. I enjoy teaching, I enjoy research, and as well, part of that process, which will pair in nicely, is that I've done some consulting across a range of topics, from AI integration at a high level to some of the more classic I/O psych. We need to make a survey to see why our employees are engaged or disengaged or how we can drive success. And so I've done all of those over the past few years, bringing me to where I am now, which is actively on the job market for the academic track, looking for assistant professor positions. That's the high level, some key points. I'll leave it there and open it up for further as we go through the talk today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a great introduction. We're going to introduce everyone, and then we're basically going to move it into a little Q&A. So if you want to go ahead, Pamela.
Yeah, so the way I describe my journey is zigzag. I've followed my strengths and interests from veterinary medicine, being a licensed veterinary technician, co-founding a nonprofit, and just kind of going on an educational journey as well that has been in the middle of online programs, going over to the UK to work on one of my masters, and then heading back into manufacturing. So I started in manufacturing a long, long, long time ago. And then coming back to it, and that's when I started working on my PhD, because I was like, okay, I've got management stuff, I've got MBA, I've got HR masters. What's missing? My undergraduate instructors got us thinking about, if they were working on their DBAs, and one was a licensed tech as well, then we could. And I've learned APA 20 years ago, so going down that route was easy. And so psychology was the missing link from a workplace side of things. And so I worked in manufacturing, from a pump compressor to pulp and paper, traveled domestically and internationally with my jobs, as well as my residencies are international. And I ended up living my dissertation, burnout live stream. So my dissertation was on job demands, resources, work engagement, and burnout, and I lived it. Last couple of years, I've been getting healthy and figuring out how I want to go into what I do next. And so it's been a mixture of having a few different things. So trying to figure out how I want to get my consulting business going. I've been adjunct instructor since May at Colorado Technical University. And then I co-host the monthly webinars with the I-O Psychology pop-up community. And I'm working on another paper with a friend. So trying to get back into doing some writing and publication.
Excellent. That's exciting stuff. Oh wait, it looks like Nathan is next, and then we'll finish with Peter.
All right. Hello, everyone. Ian, there was actually an RFP that I've seen that may have your name on it. And Pam, Vet Med was my favorite department when I was consulting. So, hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Price. Classified, I built the academic I-O. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my background. So in my undergrad, I did not know anything about I-O psychology until my junior year. I was already a part of like 2 fraternities, 5 organizations, double major in psychology and business. And for me, I am religious. So I was just crying, praying. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't merge a field or create a field in this way. And weirdly to say, I was watching TV and they were showing their psych programs. And I saw I-O psychology. And I was like, what is this? I typed it up and I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So within that time period, I actually worked in student affairs. I want to say for 5 years. I love the students, like understanding like leadership development within that realm, enjoyed it. Then I moved University of Maryland alum to the master's program. And in one of my previous institutions as well, I was able to learn a lot of I-O, but I still didn't have my I-O voice. Unfortunately, the way that I got into becoming and building the academic I-O is in one of the departments that I worked in, I had a hate crime happen. And there was like some toxic work environments as well, workplace bullying and all that. So I was able to gather myself because I thought of my colleagues around me. And I said, oh, we can't do this. So that was when I did my very first intervention within an academic setting. So I worked on their performance management, on their selection and hiring, on their leadership development for the students as well. And luckily, I was able to go to Hawaii to heal. That was the best decision that I made to really recover who I was. So during that time period, I was working at Hawaii Job Corps, working with the students and also working on preparing them for the workforce as well. Then again, got frustrated again of just knowing that there was something much bigger than me. Then I was recruited out to the University of Minnesota to work as a talent strategy consultant. It was an I-O playground. I had talent acquisition, leadership development, employee engagement, I don't know if I said performance management as well, but I was able to tap into every last one of them and also work on the leadership development programs as well. So I had a really good time during that time period. And then another aha moment was many institutions are suffering. A lot of people within the institutions are suffering as well. So I took that experience of being an internal consultant and built the academic I-O, where I'm able to provide consultations for universities across the US, while also thinking about how do I disseminate the information from our field, because many of the issues were at the organization level overall. So I created a summit to bring together IOs to bridge a lot of the practices, because I say that they do popcorn practices where they figure out a new theory and it's not as new as they think, you know? So within that realm, I've been working as an external consultant and an internal consultant. And I just say follow. Well, we'll probably get to advice a little bit later, but hey, never negate all the things that you do, because it's always building upon where you'll be going next. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. So I look forward for the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're going to kick it over to Peter here, and then we'll start up with the Q&A.
Great, guys. So kind of following the trend, if you're in the position like you're in undergrad or graduate school and you only recently heard about I-O psychology, I will join that trend. I did not hear about I-O psychology until well after I did my initial master's degree. And so coming from that perspective to where I am now, 25 years later, I'm a fellow of the APA, American Psychological Association. I run my own firm, do leadership consulting. I have contracts with the Department of Defense, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Fortune 500 companies. I do adjunct teaching. I've held faculty positions, including a tenured position at Penn State. And I also do National Advisory Council works for think tanks. So I'm with the Global and National Security Institute at the University of South Florida now. So to go from never even have heard of the field to where I am now is quite the journey. So for me, that all started off in the Air Force. I joined the Air Force when I was 17. Frankly, I was a first generation college student and I needed a way to pay for it. So that's where I started. I was an aircraft electrician. I deployed around the world fixing aircraft. And it really showed me how important leadership was and what a difference it could make in day-to-day organizations. And through that passion, I tried to develop myself and look for opportunities to learn more about this thing. And I was selected to become an officer. And so you go from being a specialist, hands-on enlisted troop, kind of that young kid, to becoming an officer, which is kind of a more managerial role where they give you kind of more leadership opportunities and positions in that mindset. But to get there, they send you off for your undergraduate degree. Again, still no psychology. I started off doing a management degree, and then I came back in and I was a project manager for the space launch program. And I did that. We did 3 satellite launches while I was there. So if you can imagine about the time when people are trying to figure out maybe how to balance their checkbook or pay off student loans, I was running multi-million-dollar operations, putting satellites into space. So if you're talking about applied experience, that really pushed me even farther. So I liked it so much, I decided to go to grad school, and still no I-O, because I did my master's degree in organizational leadership and human resource management, which is kind of putting together I-O, right? You got the I and the O side, kind of, but more of a managerial flavor. So it's interesting to see the comparisons of what we study as I-O psychologists versus that more managerial perspective of those approaches. And with that degree and my background, I was selected to teach at the United States Air Force Academy. So I went to the Department of Behavioral Sciences and Leadership and taught Air Force Academy cadets as they were going through their academic education before they become an officer. And I was fortunate to be selected for kind of a rare opportunity. They send off about 2 officers from the Air Force every year to go do a PhD. So this is when I actually started my I-O psychology career specifically. I went off to Penn State, did my degree in I-O psychology, but the catch is they only allow you 3 years from start to finish. So spoilers, I survived, I'm still here, but it can be done. So after that, I came off doing a lot of research, not just with leadership, but kind of the fundamental aspects of that. And I really got interested in studying power and influence as a social dynamic, kind of as the foundations of a lot of leadership theory that's out there. But more importantly, it gives you an opportunity to look at other problem sets. So I always encourage IOs to look at things outside of just our career field and apply I/O psychology to it. So what did I do? Just like anyone, I went to U.S. Special Operations Command and worked with Special Operations Forces on countering violent extremism. So I was embedded with the Psychological Operations Unit. I was doing multinational research and assessments for psychological operations to counter violent extremism in about 30 different countries, writing national policy, really putting our I/O psychology perspectives in use in a tangible and applied way. When we're talking about things that we study, we talk about behavioral motivation and attitudes, new applications of attraction, selection, attrition theory, where you're getting people not to join extremist organizations. And that's kind of a broad way that we as I/O psychologists can contribute to a lot of different areas. From that, I went back to the U.S. Air Force Academy as a senior officer, and so I ran the Department of Behavioral Sciences and Leadership as the Director of Operations, and that's when I became a tenured professor out there. And I think I'm almost up to 30 different classes that I've taught across all my different institutions. So I believe in the applied work, thinking about wicked problems that are hard to solve, and using I/O psychology in these spaces, but then always finding a way to do your own research, refine how you're communicating this field to other people and teaching. And so that was a tremendous opportunity to kind of get back to that. But I wasn't done yet, because being that I was now retiring from the Air Force, if you can believe that, I started my own firm. So now that's where I got into doing leadership development and working with other contractors and bringing in other I/O psychologists to do these bigger contracts, and looking for ways to develop executives and then frontline leaders and then team leadership dynamics across the board. But since I had this unique opportunity, because I spoke military, I understood the research theory of I/O psychology, and I understood the tangible problems that companies were dealing with day to day. I wound up founding a nonprofit that did veteran transition research. So we've done national level veteran transition research, not just for ourselves, but we've also turned around and applied that to shape government programs, the Hiring Our Heroes program. We've done program analysis, program evaluations for them. We've also went out and trained Fortune 100 companies. I worked with everyone from Pepsi to Walmart to some other companies that are just interested in hiring veterans. And what better career field to help that process than I/O psychologists? And so finding a way to be that translator is another opportunity that I/O psychologists can reach in and dig into and find other ways to apply our craft. So from all these experiences, it's given me a lot of different perspectives of where I/O can go. We have the academic route, we can go pure government route, we can handle these wicked big world problems, we can do nonprofit space. If the entry level jobs and opportunities aren't there, think of internship opportunities in unique places that you don't normally see I/O psychologists, or go find the problems and apply your theory and craft to those problems, because you might be the only one working on them, but our field is so dynamic that we have the tools to do that, whether it's assessment, research, or just the one-on-one translating theory into effective practice. And so that's kind of my journey on how I got to this point. And I/O's fun. You should try it.
All right. Thank you all so much for those great introductions. So we'll kind of segue into the Q&A now. The way that we do this is you can pop a question into the chat. One of us will read it out loud so that people on the recording can know what question we're answering. But if anyone has any questions and they want to ask verbally, just go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll just hope that no one interrupts each other.
I have a question. I can start us off. My question might be a little bit more directed at Nathan, but I think I'd be interested in everybody's perspective on this. One of the things looking at your bio that I did think was so interesting is that you consult for higher education, and it sounds like you also do consulting K through 12, which I think is really unique because sometimes they might look for consultants and not look for I-O specifically because they sort of have this other version that they might look for. I also thought it was unusual because they're kind of historically underfunded and don't always reach out to get these services that would be beneficial. So I'm curious how you managed to get into this space and where the resources came from.
So I will say word of mouth and also being very visible. Actually, the K through 12 interactions that I've been in all have been either referred to me or I remember one time I was just walking at a fair and I was just hearing about their issues. I was like, hey, how are things going? And as Peter said earlier, like really hearing the major issues and the problems that people have, you're able to actually provide some insight, and it just happened to come across as they're like, you're very insightful. We'd love to have you. These are the issues. And it started with the conversation. I know how difficult it can be when you're internal in an organization to try to provide that insight because sometimes they don't value in the ways that they should. I've talked to a couple of individuals that are in the K through 12 space, and they were just saying, we want to provide intervention. We have the expertise, but they want us to be in this specific role. So being positioned as an external consultant sort of really helps with bringing that validity and what we can do too. I usually don't get a lot of questions within my background either, unless I'm in a higher ed context. And I will say, I always say this joke, if you can deal with disgruntled faculty members, you can do anything in this world. I will say that. So yeah, that's a little bit how to infiltrate the K-12 system. And also I have individuals that want to provide interventions and they're like, hey, my school needs it. Could you pitch it to them? And I'm like, of course, let's try this out. And they just hop on the project and be like, I'm here. Can I assist? I'm like, of course. So, and we can always chat after this too.
Do any of our other speakers want to hop in on that question as well? Thank you so much, Nathan, by the way. That was a very insightful answer.
I'll pair in just a little bit on finding those opportunities. Were you mentioning like you just overheard a conversation, join in, you're like, oh, interesting. You know a lot about this. I've had very similar experiences both with consulting engagements and adjunct teaching opportunities where I'll be talking at a panel. So it's like, I really like your energy. You want to come teach? I'm like, you don't know anything about the quality of my teaching. It's good. But all you know is that I had the right energy and was willing to have a conversation with you and bring out the things that were of interest. And that can really be a very key metric to finding opportunities, is just having people able to interact with you and enjoy that process.
To follow on what Ian just mentioned, that's how I got my adjunct role. A friend asked me to guest speak at one of her prior schools that she taught at, and an opportunity came up at CTU, and she said, I'm trying to get into, move into full-time faculty instead of adjunct. And she's like, I'm going to bring you along. Well, guess what? I came along for the ride. And interview, not quite an interview, it was just more or less conversation. So it's really building that network. And I don't formally network. That's just, I just, connect with people that like-minded, similar-minded, like Ian, and, just go and have fun conversations and get to know people.
All right, we have another question in the chat. Megan said, what is everyone's favorite way to keep studying I-O while also having a full-time job, hopefully avoiding burnout in the process? Pamela, I don't know if you want to hop in on this one first.
So yeah, that's a go for the first part of the question. At least what I've done is follow certain people, and I always end up following more, that are not only like-minded, similar interests, but also those that are from different fields. So following more of the clinical side, the business side, or even, you know, just other people, because I kind of like having a finger on all kinds of different things, because they're all interconnected, and because I/O can touch anything, it's always an interesting perspective. So part of it is just finding your medium, whether it is Medium or LinkedIn or whatever other platform between PsyOp or AOM that has the type of resources, articles that are of interest. And it also depends upon what you are focused on, interested in. If you're looking for something totally outside the I/O space, or if it's something that it's adjacent or directly related to me, it's just finding, those things that really pull your interest. From the burnout side, I'd say it's the overload of information and feeling a bit as if, okay, I now have accumulated all this. Do I feel the need to go and put use to it? And I was like that for a while, and then it's like, no, I'm just going to kind of read, and if it percolates up at some point in time later on, then so be it. So it's a little bit of understanding some of that clinical counseling side, and kind of understanding how you work through things and not allow yourself to overwhelm yourself by taking in so much information and thinking you have to do something with that information. A lot of times it's, some people, especially, I don't know, I'm going to speak for me, PhD, it's like, I'm just a information eater. I just want to learn a little bit about everything. So it's really just finding the places, the sources that are interesting, that have the right vibe for you, that you can find a connection. And it's doing it in parts and pieces. You don't have to do it every day. Maybe it's an article a week, an article a month, a page a day. It's finding that workability, that balance that works for you.
And also leaning on grace to communicate with your professors. I remember I was going through the worst time in grad school, and I was like, I'm trying to learn R and I just can't do it. It's just too much. And they're like, hey, what do you need? And that is what's great about having a support system, especially with your professors, because one, if I needed to have a project to be within, I would say, in the work that I was doing, they're like, okay, well, how can we do that? How can we brainstorm to make sure that's easy on you as well? I think that many of the opportunities as well has come from my professors. I was like, hey, in grad school, your projects, I was like, are there any projects that I can hop on? Where is this assignment coming from? They're like, oh yeah, no. Actually, I have this consultative gig to do. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then you connect in that way. So I will say that's how I got through that way, because it is a lot. And also knowing it's a journey too for yourself. I always, when I mentor individuals, I always say, after graduating or during the program, we're going to be super IOs, we're going to change the world. And yes, we can, but also knowing that it is building blocks of where you're going to go as well. And I feel the pressure of saying, if after graduating, I don't know if I can do this, because you know a lot more than you think. And sometimes it can get in the way of just feeling like you can execute. So always have that great mentor behind you to definitely try to push you, and also say, hey, I see the best in you as well. How are the ways that, because a lot of people are willing to invest in you. So utilize that, communicate through it. It may be tough, but there are some colleagues, there are some classmates that may be going through the same thing. And also, I will say my calendar always keeps me on track. I am neurodivergent, so I need those reminders even for lunch and dinner. I'm like, oh, it's gym time. So for me, that's usually how I've navigated. One, being transparent, then two, my calendar speaks volumes. So
one of the things that's helped me a lot is embracing, I use a kind of colloquialism that maybe isn't perfect, but embracing being the fool in the room. I thrive by going into a room of people who are way smarter than me in fields that I may not understand at all and just learning. And like that's fun for me, and it takes away the edge of like, but I have to know everything about this. It's like, no, I'm with, machine learning AI experts. I have some degree of knowledge. They far surpass me. Or I go into a room with people who have spent lifetimes in learning and development and coaching, and I go like, I'm here because I know y'all know stuff that I'm ready to learn and be fascinated and be the fool in the room. And that kind of, it takes weight off my shoulders, but also is a really fun way to keep learning, because I keep putting myself in those situations where I'm surrounded by people who I know for a fact know exponentially more on this topic. And that's a really fun way to keep learning, but in a way that doesn't burn me out.
Thanks so much for those answers. There is Wendy, if you want to unmute yourself, I see that you have your hand raised if you want to ask your question.
So my question is, I am actually a licensed psychotherapist, and I just completed my degree in organizational psychology. And it has always been an interest of mine since the 90s. And I decided to actually go forward and earn my master's. So my challenge has been, I have been pretty isolated, having my own practice. And I have been networking like crazy, and I'm even working with a career consultant. I don't necessarily want to be a consultant by myself, because I really want to have somebody to team with, because I am so new. Wink, wink, but I'm not. So I'm wondering if you have any suggestions. I am not shy, and when I interact or I try to connect with people, I really do get a lot. I'm busy. They have good intentions. So I'm wondering if you have any recommendations or any suggestions. And yeah.
I guess I'll hop in. One, connecting with individuals. If you ever need anyone, please reach out to me.
Gosh,
If
thank
I don't
you.
respond back, just reach out to Life. I promise you, my mind, I try to get there. But I will say, connecting with individuals that have an in with others is definitely needed. And also presenting at conferences, PSYOP, BIOP, LIOP, it's just more of it gives you that access point that you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I remember I had one of my great friends and colleagues now. I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I just want to meet. He was like, who is this kid that's trying to tell me what to do in the field of I-O? So we just met, and he was like, oh, you're actually pretty cool. I like you. I was like, I didn't know that you didn't. But but sometimes it is difficult, especially with how individuals are taxed out. I will say hop in some of social groups as well. The local groups really do help out. And I always say a lot of the I-Os that I know, I'm like, y'all are part of my I-O family. So they're very receptive. Or if they're not available, they'll be like, Nate, I'm tapped out. I can't do anything. So it happens that way, but it is hard to infiltrate a little bit. Especially it depends on what season it is. We're getting ready for proposal season. So if you try to reach out right now, I'm pretty sure most people will be tapped out. So, but if there's anyone that you see in my network, just let me know, because it does just take that one person to connect you to who you'll need, because it can be very scary while trying to do gig work. And also, I always have a project manager with me because I know the way my mind works. If I don't have somebody pressing that button saying, get it done now, Nate, it's going to take me a minute. So for me, if there's anyone that you need, just let me know. And I'll pass the mic to someone as well.
I have a couple of things for the last question, and dovetailing into this question, there's a couple of resources that might help. The first one is going back to looking at ways to learn about and study I-O psychology in little bite-sized pieces. The first resource I'll offer you, and I'll drop all these in the chat, is ioatwork.com. It's basically a site that does a lot of summary of I-O psychology-based articles, mostly written up by graduate students and people who are actually working in the field. Another resource is SciOps website, specifically the resources and publications link. That will give you not only some similar type of resources, but also allows you to look up different members in SciOp. You might have to be a student affiliate to look at the actual members at least, or if you're a member, it won't just list a laundry list of people. You can also search based on their specialties and backgrounds and research interests. So if you're trying to find a community of people who are looking at doing similar things, that's another way to do it. And then similarly, SciOp has a local I-O psychology group list that lists all of the subgroups of I-O Psychology Society local groups that you can reach out to, become a part of, or just see when their next events are. 95% of the time, it will be some sort of virtual event that you can tag along to. So really low effort, but that'll help you provide a support group, get in touch with people who are interested in the same topics you are, maybe even plan to do some submissions for the upcoming conference that we have. Submissions are coming due the end of the month, by the way. So, and I'll drop those resources for you guys.
So something I want to add as well, Wendy, is because I-O is so broad, and I hear this question a lot from students is, well, how do I find an I-O job? It's really understanding it's looking at a Venn diagram. So a colleague has used a Venn diagram to pull in all that she's done. And so she's looked at what are her interests, what's her academic background. She comes from an engineering background and finally found her niche in I-O. And so she really likes the L&D space. And so it's finding what are your interests, what are your strengths, what are you pulling from your prior career that is going to be useful into your current career. Do you want to find what I call a cookie cutter job that has this preordained job title of, L&D trainer, what have you, or do you really want to go out there and do a bit of what Nate does, Peter does, and smattering of what Ian does? Do you want to be this, not necessarily a jack of all trades, but do you want to be a resource, accessible for many? So it really comes down to, what do you want to do for organizations? Is it the L&D space? Is it talent management, performance management, coaching? I mean, there's just so many different ways to frame. It's really understanding who you are and what you're good at. Are you more of a numbers person, people analytics, or, et cetera? So that's how I've really come out of my burnout and going, what do I want to do? Who am I? I have 6 degrees. That can't define me. So who am I? What have I become through all of my degrees, all of my experience? That's how I've framed it, and that may be one way to kind of consider where you want to go next.
Oh yeah, and don't feel like you have to do it all at once too. I think that there was like 2 years where I took down my consultant page just because I couldn't do internal, external at the same time. So whether you need some support, you don't have to do it all by yourself. It's taxing, especially with every entrepreneur that's here. Sometimes it's always about marketing too. So it's like, whether it's in person, whether it's doing all these things, and a lot of people I'm one of them. I hate marketing with a burning passion, but it's necessary to be an entrepreneur. So, hey.
All right. Kale, did you have a question as well?
I do. I feel a little greedy asking questions. I'm an organizer, but I think it's a good one. I'll keep it short because we're running a little low on time. My question is for both Ian and Peter. I wanted to ask you about like working in I-O in the military, whether it be kind of an I side, an individual like assessments or competency modeling, or an O side. Like, what are your opinions on breaking into like working in military if you don't have any military background? Like, I would love to go and do a project for the Army or something, but I'm not, I've never enlisted. So I'm curious, like, do you think that's important? Like, do you, like Peter mentioned, you were able to speak the language, so it was very easy for you. But I'm just curious thoughts on that, or if it's like something you think more I/Os should try to pursue.
I'll say a couple entry ways to do it. You have to kind of work backwards and look at the contractors who are doing work in that space. A lot of government contracts have been cut back recently for various reasons. But they're still doing calls for proposals, requests for proposals, where they're actively looking for certain support. And from those requests for proposals, it will give you like descriptions of the type of work and things they need. And then from there, you can kind of see who's bidding on those. And they are the type of, those are the organizations that will have the opportunities to come on as either entry level, or if you're transitioning like from a government role, like an actual government position over to a contracting role, you can see the type of work that you're doing. You don't necessarily have to have work specifically in the military. You just have to understand the problem set that they're trying to get and show how whatever you're applying, whatever the background or experience you have and you're applying, meets those requirements. And so you're basically working with the contractors, not directly with the government. The contractors hire you on, the contractors have the contract with the government, and they do the work specifically. So you're not going to find a lot of GS positions specific in the military for psychology roles in traditional I/O. There are some few and far between, but by and large, you will be a contractor or a subcontractor supporting a bigger effort.
And I've entered into that space much more on the research side, where we've submitted responses to call for proposals where it's like, hey, we want to know about trust. How do people trust their leaders? Well, that's a very relevant concept for the military. And so even just as a trust research or expert, I could get brought in to talk about that. Also, Cole or Kale, you might want to mute yourself. I think you got some background noise going on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, good. But so that's the path that I've taken more frequently is that research side of, even with my nature contact research, you go, okay, well, how does this apply? Welcome to the fun game of I/O, where you go, well, we know that there's research about the fact that nature reduces violence, especially if you're talking about cityscape or larger levels. So how can you implement this to reduce radicalization? Army, Navy, Air Force, a lot of the research institutes around the military are very interested in those kinds of questions. And so you find ways to apply it, and there are plenty of grants, especially even now where a lot of funding has drained up. A lot of new funding is being pushed forward to say, how do we be more efficient? How do we make people work better? And you find the way that in part of that you go, well, if people feel better, they're going to function better. Let me do some research here. I was working with a colleague recently who does research on well-being and optimal functioning. And the idea of performance doesn't necessarily need to be our ultimate criterion. Optimal functioning can be that ultimate criterion, and that includes well-being, that people need to be well to perform optimally. And this was work for specifically a military grant that was a couple $1 million of how do we shift our readiness to be able to have an armed forces that is ready and capable and healthy. And so you can really find a lot of these avenues in conceptually through research grants and opportunities as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you. That was very insightful. There's one more in the chat here, Bree.
Okay. So Pamela, I see that you kind of answered this a little bit in the chat, but if anyone wants to jump on, just for the people who are going to watch this later, Eusebia, I am so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. They said, I am a career changer. I'm a speech pathologist in higher education for 13 years. Any suggestions to leverage past experiences that don't fit neatly into I-O when I am not exactly an early career professional?
I would throw out, probably in addition to what Pam's already said in the chat, that if what you want to do is truly disconnected, then absolutely, like finding a mentor, finding someone who can help you kind of skip the pre-work. But also, I am very much, as my trajectory has shown, the person who goes, there is nothing unrelated. And everything that you've done is part of a story that is deeply fascinating. No good story goes, yeah, I figured out what I wanted to do. I did it and I did it good. Cool. The story is like, I did this and it's completely different. And let me tell you how this applies, how nature applies to this, how speech pathology could help me with coaching or articulation and communication within the workplace. There are absolutely ways to tell that story. And sometimes it might just be talking with someone to be like, what story can I tell, and getting that brainstorming going. But I think there is no such thing as a disconnected skill set or experience.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Oh, I was gonna say agreed, because I think that it always builds on something, and then you can always like find that silver lining. Because it's more of, if it's not created, build it. That's what I always say. But also connect with those that may be able to find the silver lining, because sometimes it's harder. I always say it's easier connecting the dots looking backwards than it is looking forward at times. So, and plus, I was trying to add in a document, but I'll send it by email. I know that I have your email, so we'll be connecting pretty soon. So.
Thank you for those responses. I appreciate it. I think that's very true, that it's easier to connect the dots looking back than forward. That is spot on for where I am right now in this process.
I have a few things to offer, because I have never just sat in one bucket of either I/O or teaching. I've worked across 3 different areas almost my whole career. So what that means is you have to communicate in some way what value you bring that's separate from all the other resources that are out there that do that. So if it's a specific background you have with, for example, your speech pathology, translate that for them and connect the dots. How does that inform how you do I/O psychology or whatever solution you're providing? So what that means is you have to intentionally create your professional identity. What I mean by that is your professional identity is not, I'm an I/O psychologist. No, you have to talk about, here's how I can help. This is what I do to help other people. These are the individuals I've worked with and the projects that we've had success with. And so doing those will get you more work. Eventually you get to a point where you're no longer applying for jobs. You're not trying to get positions specifically. People are coming to you for different work. And so that gives you a lot more diversity in your client lists and makes you more resilient in terms of income. So you always have opportunities, and it takes a while to get there. But where it starts at is crafting that story to communicate the specific value that you bring that's separate from the whole group that's out there, in a way that you can kind of communicate succinctly and quickly, so that you're the first person that they think of when they have a problem like this. And that's the process that you have to get to. And you do that whether you're an entry-level person, early career, coming out of grad school, mid-career, transitioning from one field to the next. You have to think about the story you're telling in terms of your professional identity, because no one else has your background. No one else has the same professional identity as you do. And if they do, then it's not a unique enough professional identity that you're communicating. And so that's the process that you go through.
Phenomenal answer, by the way. If anyone else has any questions, we're getting pretty close to our end time. So if anyone wants to ask any final questions, we can do 1, maybe 2 more. Like I said before, I'll give it the awkward few seconds, and then we'll start wrapping up if no one has anything else. And just in case people haven't been seeing the chat, everyone is sending their LinkedIn. So please feel free to connect with each other. All of our speakers have put their LinkedIns. I put my LinkedIn, Kale's LinkedIn, and the link to join the group for the Houston I-O Psychology Network. So y'all please feel free to connect with each other. We just went over 100 times how important it is to build relationships and network, and this is a phenomenal opportunity to do that.
I guess I can end us with a question. If you could go back and do something differently or do something earlier, what would you have done?
I've got perhaps two answers for this. One is the anti-answer, which is I very much thought in prior terms for a long time, especially after the pandemic, and it felt really bad to go, it's been 2 years and I could have done so much in this 2 years. I was at home, I was by my computer, the amount of stuff I could have gotten done. And more recently came to the realization of like, that does not help me. What helps me is what can I do now? Because I can't change anything I did. That said, I answer in the spirit of the question as well, which is there's a concept I learned about recently called the Misogi way. And the idea of it is to do one year-defining thing every year. That you should be able to think back and go, 25, that was the year I did this thing. That could be just a thing about life. It could also be career relevant. But to me, the power of story is perhaps one of the most powerful things in career, in academia, in life. And to do things that give you those story early and frequently, you'll be so ready to have unique conversations and have that unique identity by the time you get to the point of crafting your professional identity. So that would be, to answer in the spirit of the question, having that like 1 year defining thing each year and really having stories to be able to tell.
I'll add in to where this is probably more of a wish, but in the end, I am who I am and I kind of like my journey. But if I could go back, I'd be like, okay, middle school, high school people, can you set us students up for better success and help us really understand what we're good at? Because I like the mechanical side of things. I have a very visual spatial brain. I can think in 3D sometimes. So I will pick apart a motor and think of all the different parts and pieces. It would have been nice to figure that out long time ago rather than, recently. So that would be kind of my one thing, but that's more, kind of tools and resources based, is just learning about me and how do I know how I think, how I learn, what am I good at? Am I more of a tactile person? Am I more of an auditory person? I'm writing notes, so auditory, no, I have to take notes. So this is all stuff that I've actually learned through my PhD and afterwards. So that would be one thing I'd add.
All right. Thank you all so much. Oh, Nate, did you have something else to add?
Okay, I'm gonna make it very quick. Field wise, this is it. I promise you, I love it all the way. But also, just to piggyback off what Ian said, and Pam as well, really figuring out who you are is essential. And some of the things just won't make sense until like a little bit afterwards, right? When you start to connect the dots of where you're going to go. I think that there has been many times where I did feel very, I think, shameful, just because after PSYOP, my messages are crazy and I cannot get through them. And even responding back like a little bit later, it's a little bit harder for me because I'm like, oh, did I miss the opportunity? But then I realize I'm just in my head because I reach out to a lot of people and they're like, no, Nate, no, we're good. We're good. All is well. And life does happen. So if I could tell my younger self to say, hey, it's okay. We do make mistakes. That's not a part of our characteristics. But just reframing a lot of things too, because it can be very taxing, especially trying to balance everything. So give yourself grace and also communicate too. A lot of people are rooting for you. So
I'd like to add real quickly that we talked a lot about networking, but I want to give you a mistake that I see a lot of people make when they try to network. Never network to get something. Don't try to get a job. Don't try to sell people something. That's not networking, right? Networking needs to be in place before you need it. So how do you network? If you like Ted Lasso, always be curious, right? Just be curious about what people do. Be curious about maybe how you can help them. Be curious about how they got to where they're going and where they want to go next. And that's not about you, but the more relationship you build that way, the more people will think about the connections that you have, how you're getting to that next step together, the opportunities that you might share. Maybe it's through volunteering through an organization, whether it's Consulting Psychology, Division 13, or APA, American Psychological Association, or SciHub. These are all opportunities that are out there, but you're not doing those things to get a job or sell people things. You're trying to understand what else is out there. You're providing help in places that need it, and you'll be surprised at how many opportunities come from that approach.
All right. I think that we got answers from everyone. I don't want to interrupt anyone else. If anyone wants to hop in, just let me know. But thank you all seriously so much. This has been such a great session. So many questions and engagement from our audience. Obviously, I appreciate all of you participating and taking the time after work hours to join us. Obviously, all of our speakers. I am so grateful for all of our speakers for all of the sessions, for their willingness to participate in this. Again, an unpaid after work hours situation here. So we recognize that you did not have to do this, but we are so grateful that you did. Just to let everyone know, our next session is going to be next Monday, the 29th, same time, 5:30 p.m. Central Time. And that one is going to be over people strategy and analytics, which is kind of a different type of I/O. We haven't covered that one yet, so I'm really excited about that. For all of our numbers people, that's going to be for you. That one is not for my brain, but that is for all of our numbers people. So yeah, I look forward to that. And again, just thank you all so much. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with Kale, the Houston I/O Psychology Network. I'm going to be posting all of the events. We have 4 left after this. We're going to of October, and then we haven't planned it yet, but we're looking at putting together some sort of in-person event for November for the people who do live in the Houston area, just to kind of celebrate, wrapping up all of these sessions. So, all right, well, I think that we are all good and everyone can go to their families and to eat dinner now. So
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
have a good week, everyone. Take care.